terrorism and rejecting violence as the first item on the working agenda. Go ahead now for the questions. I question, but regarding the government delegation, we heard that the governmental delegation, some said that the governmental delegation is behind the failure to reach an agreement. You spoke about the 4 points. What is your stance? No, Mr. Ibrahimi didn't say this. He didn't say that we are the ones. He didn't say that the governmental delegation is responsible for the failure of the dialogue. I didn't hear this. This is not true. That is not true. The international mediator, Mr. Ibrahimi, didn't say this. He is a witness to what took place in the conference hall. Not only him, we also saw 14 others who were with him. They were with him during the meetings, and everything is recorded. The objection, as I said, came from the opposing side. We agreed to the working agenda which was proposed by the international mediator. The disagreement began when the opposing side provided its own explanation regarding the working agenda, how it explains its version of the working agenda, whereby one day would be designated to discuss combating terrorism and then another day to discuss the transitional government, as they call it, without ending the issue of terrorism, meaning that they wanted to leave the issue of combating terrorism, they wanted to leave this open, an open-ended discussion. Their only concern was to jump to the second item, going to the second item without having a common reading regarding fighting terrorism. This means that they are delaying the problems from item 1 to item 2. So the objection was regarding the selectiveness of the other side, the selectiveness of the working agenda.
I will.
Sir, why did you not accept his order for the discussions that he proposed?
Well, it seems that you didn't get what I have been saying in Arabic, which is absolutely understandable. The point was that the Syrian government's delegation accepted from the beginning, within the first 3 minutes of the meeting, the agenda proposed by the international mediator, Mr. Al-Brahimi. We did accept the agenda, the draft agenda of the meeting. The problem was raised immediately by the other side when they gave their own interpretation of the agenda. And this is where the problems started raising in the meeting. The other side gave his own interpretation of the agenda by saying that there is no need we finalize the first item. There is no need to fully finalize the first item. We will give it one day for discussion, and then we will move to the other item, which is the interim government.
But Ambassador, we all heard Dr. Brahimi say this was his proposal.
Yes.
One day on one day on the other. Why don't you accept his proposal?
We don't accept this for a very simple reason. We said that once you have an agenda, you should respect the agenda fully, without any interpretation or misinterpretation. Hold on. Hold your horses. Hold your horses. We said that we cannot move from one item 1, to item 2 or item 3 or item 4 without fully considering this item and concluding by a common vision of this item by the two sides. Something that the other side objected to by saying, no, we don't agree with this reading. So they wanted to dictate their own interpretation of the agenda in a very wrong way. And this is where the problem started between the two sides.
But Mr. Brahimi says it's his order.
I question, but sound is not clear. A question regarding escalation. Isn't there a possibility of escalation? Because some international sides are beginning to express their stances, the latest American stance about escalation and arming once again. isn't there fear that the failure here in Geneva could lead to an escalation? This point was raised today, and we informed the international mediator and the other side that the atmosphere surrounding the Geneva meetings do not reflect honest or good intentions from the opposing side. We reminded them of what President Obama said during his meeting with the Jordanian king, and we reminded them of what Ambassador Ford requested from the opposition coalition regarding the necessity of escalating the military situation, intensifying the situation also in the south, in Dar'a. We raised these points, and we said that such stances do not encourage at all giving a positive atmosphere for the dialogue taking place in Geneva, and it hence gives the impression that there is no serious, genuine will on the other side and on their supporters in combating terrorism. This is the main issue which made everyone in the hall realize that there is no commitment. We don't have a national partner on the other side in order to fight terrorism. We don't have such a national partner to fight terrorism. What are the conditions to go to round 3 of negotiations? There are no conditions. There are no conditions.
Sorry? No, this is your own conclusion. This is not. This is not accurate. What you have just said. We didn't say that we will not get back. We promised our own people to get back to Geneva, to continue the Geneva talks as long as it takes, because we are extremely careful about stopping the bloodshed in Syria and combating terrorism. This, I promise you, we will be committed to doing so.
Dr. Ibrahimi spoke about certain mechanisms, but we heard that you rejected these mechanisms, and he spoke about going to New York and also briefing the Security Council and the 5 permanent members. Now, according to Ibrahimi, the ball is in your court. What is the next step? What is the next step? What is the fate of this process? No, we didn't reject. We did not reject the framework at all. We didn't reject the mechanism. We said, this for your information, and I hope that you say this to the channel which you represent. I hope you broadcast this. We were the first ones to accept the working agenda. When the international mediator proposed this agenda, we were the first to accept it. But he said, please, wait a moment. Don't jump to your own conclusions. I'm basing what I say on what Ibrahimi said. Either you ask me or you speak. Either you speak or I speak. Please be silent so I can speak. The answer is that he proposed an agenda and we agreed to it. We agreed to it. Before the other delegation, the problems began when the opposing side proposed its vision and its interpretation of the agenda. The opposing side said that it is not necessary to reach an understanding on the first item before going to the second item. We said that we cannot go to the second item before we thoroughly discuss the first item and reach a common vision, a common understanding and an agreement. If we don't reach an agreement regarding the first item, this means we are delaying the problem from one item to another, and then the snowball will grow and we won't reach an understanding regarding the other items. This is the problem exactly, the exact problem which took place. I question once again, we heard that the way to reach a solution is helping state institutions, preserving state institutions. It seems, my dear friend, that you're not listening to what I say, you're not following what we are saying. This is their vision. These are dreams and illusions, and this is unrealistic. The opposing side and its members are looking for public relations. They're not serious in holding political dialogue. This meeting for them is a public relations activity, but this is the work of amateurs, not the work of politicians. You cannot discuss one of the 4 items proposed by the international mediator. How can you enter a discussion about the transitional government whereby you haven't even discussed the items before this particular issue of the transitional government? According to the sequence of the international mediator, we have the first, second, and third and fourth items. How can we jump over the first item and reach the second item without a common understanding about the first item? Ahmed Zakaria Dr. Jaafari, you said from the beginning that it is impossible for you to hold dialogue with terrorism, but you have come. We didn't say this. Please be precise in what you say. We didn't say this. You came to Geneva to hold dialogue with politicians from the Syrian opposition coalition under Arab and international auspices. However, it is strange that Minister Muallim in the first round accused most countries that they are ambassadors of terrorist groups, and the day before yesterday your government also spoke about these others or accused the opposing side of being terrorists. Dr. Jaafari, I want a convincing reason. Why do you stay in a terrorist conference and participate in a terrorist conference? Your question is a terrorist question, actually. You're trying to terrorize me and you won't be successful. Your question is a terrorist question. First of all, the decision which you're pointing out to, this decision came out before Geneva, 2 months before Geneva conference. It has nothing to do with Geneva. Second of all, we shouldn't only fight terrorism by ourselves. It is required that we find a national partner in the opposition coalition who also fights terrorism. Those who reject fighting terrorism, it means that they are part of terrorism. When we speak about terrorism, we're not only speaking formally, even in depth, even in contact. Realistically, anyone who rejects, no, my dear friend, you're disagreeing with me. Please be objective. We said that anyone who rejects fighting terrorism means that he's encouraging terrorism or considers terrorism to be a secondary issue. And by the way, as I said just before, on during
live pictures there from Geneva, the chief Syrian negotiator and the Syrian ambassador to the UN, Mr. Bashar Al-Jaafari, addressing reporters after the final day of talks in Geneva, mediated by Mr. Lakhdar Brahimi between the Syrian government and the foreign-backed opposition. Bashar Al-Jaafari made it clear now in his address to reporters that the government delegation did accept the 4-point agenda of the talks, but the opposition, he said, gave their own interpretation of the agenda by saying that there is no need to fully finalize the first item, which is the issue of terrorism and tackling the violence. He said the government delegation says we have to respect the entire agenda in full, but the opposition wanted to dictate their own interpretation. He said that the government has insisted that every single article in the agenda must be discussed in full. We were surprised, he said, that the other side didn't want to reach an agreement on the issue of terrorism, but to jump to the second issue, which was transition. He said this approach would only delay a possible full agreement to reach peace in Syria. He said the government delegation was and is ready to discuss all 4 parts of the agenda without a selective approach. He said the government will spare no effort to continue talks with a positive spirit because, he said, we want to end violence and that is the main priority for the Syrian people. The opposition coalition, he said, is incapable of ending terrorism in Syria and doesn't have the will to do so. He said, shockingly, they don't even believe that there is terrorism in Syria. He also was asked about a possible third round of talks. Mr. Bashar Al-Jaafari said, we have promised our people that we're going to get back to the talks and we will do as much as we can to make these talks successful. He also said that we haven't placed any conditions for round 3 of talks to take place. Of course, and neither of the sides have said whether there is going to be a third round or when it is going to be held, but again, the Syrian delegation saying there that it will take part in further talks to make an agreement happen as soon as possible. Lakhdar Brahimi earlier, the UN Arab League mediator, also expressing hope that a third round could take place, but he said the sides need time now to reflect and to think in what way they can make the process move forward. Again, the latest remarks by Mr. Bashar Al-Jaafari, chief Syrian negotiator, speaking to reporters in Geneva. We will, of course, be giving you more updates in our news. Do stay with us.